Boyfriend's family, mock black law valedictorian. Her brilliance silences their scorn. Not everyone understands the effort this black girl has made, but today, the world will have to acknowledge her. That was Lovell Scott's first thought as she stood among the expectant crowd at the University of Chicago's graduation ceremony. This event wasn't just a celebration. It was the pinnacle of a long journey Lovell had endured with persistence, pain, and racial prejudice. Today, she wasn't just receiving the title of valedictorian of the law school, a remarkable achievement, but also proving her strength and rising above all the obstacles life had thrown her way. She was a black girl, standing out among a sea of radiant faces. She possessed not only intelligence, but also an unbreakable will, qualities that could never be dimmed. With her thick hair neatly tied back and a regal purple dress hugging her proud frame, Lovell shone brightly, like a star in the sky on this graduation day. Yet deep within her, an anxious feeling stirred, a feeling she couldn't shake as she thought about her first meeting with the family of Raymond Shaw, her boyfriend. Raymond was the man Lovell loved, but his family was a completely different story. The Shaw family was the epitome of wealth, power, and reverence for social status. As part of Chicago's upper class, they couldn't possibly grasp what Lovell had endured, the struggles she had fought her way out of. Though Raymond had tried to reassure her and ease the tension of this meeting, Lovell knew this would be a challenge, unlike any she had ever faced. She knew that today, the attention wouldn't just be on her accomplishments, but also on the discrimination she might encounter from the very family of the man she loved. Though the graduation was filled with joy and celebration, Lovell couldn't shake the quiet unease inside her. She had spent countless hours preparing her speech, a meaningful address that reflected her difficult journey and the fight it took to earn her place. But for Lovell, the most important thing today wasn't the speech. It was how Raymond's family would perceive her. Would they truly see who she was? Could they move beyond racial prejudice and recognize her worth? She had often wondered if they were capable of accepting her, a black girl from a modest neighborhood where her family worked tirelessly every day. Her mother was a librarian who never stopped working to support the family, and her father was a mechanic who taught Lovell how to fix the things the world had broken. Lovell had been raised in an environment rich with resilience and patience. Though they lacked luxury, her family instilled in her the values of hard work, perseverance, and never giving up. But today, at this decisive moment, Lovell knew she would be facing trials she had never imagined: discrimination, doubt, and prejudices about what a black girl could achieve. These questions lingered in her mind as she looked at the hopeful faces surrounding her, as the stage lights shone down on her, and as she felt the presence of Raymond's family approaching. But Lovell did not let those worries slow her steps. She was ready for this meeting. As the valedictorian of the law school, she had broken through every barrier, and now she had no reason to fear. Her speech, even if it didn't please everyone, would be a bold declaration against everything society had used to diminish her all these years. This was the moment she had waited for, and no matter what challenge lay ahead, she would not allow anyone to diminish her worth. At that moment, the golden light of late afternoon bathed the University of Chicago's campus, casting a shimmering atmosphere over the graduation ceremony. While everyone else was immersed in joy and pride, for Lovell Scott, this moment was far from simple. She could feel the tension in the air the instant Raymond Shaw walked in with his family, a world of wealth and power she had never truly belonged to. Raymond, with his warm smile and kind eyes, seemed like the only bright spot in the crowd. He made his way quickly through the people, walked up to Lovell, reached out, and gave her a brief hug. But in that intimate moment, Lovell felt a strange sense of loneliness. as though she were the only one standing outside the larger conversation his family was creating. When Maya Shaw, Raymond's mother, approached, Lovell could feel the chill in every one of her movements. Maya didn't relax as she stepped closer, and her eyes were sharp, as if assessing everything about Lovell, from her skin to the dress she wore. "Hello, Lovell," she said, her voice light but rigid. There was only a quick handshake, as if that were the bare minimum required for this encounter. Maya turned away almost instantly, as though she had fulfilled her social duty. There was no warmth, no congratulations, and none of the respect Lovell had hoped for. Though Maya's words and gestures weren't outright hostile, Lovell could sense the hidden contempt in them. Raymond's mother was a powerful woman, with an air of superiority and precision in every small detail. Her lack of friendliness wasn't just suspicion, it was a clear declaration that Lovell didn't belong in their world. The moment Maya stepped away, Gerard Shaw, Raymond's father, continued the unspoken assessment. Lovell could feel the scrutiny in his gaze, as though he were searching for a reason to deem her unworthy. Gerard said little, but his silence weighed more heavily than any direct criticism. He looked Lovell up and down, and she felt his stare like a sharp blade, ready to strike at the smallest flaw. She tried to maintain her composure, but she couldn't ignore the coldness radiating from him. With Camille Shaw, Raymond's sister, the contempt was no longer hidden in silence or glances. It came through sharp words. Camille, dressed in an expensive blazer and exuding perfection, kept glancing at Lovell, and when her eyes landed on Lovell's dress, a mocking smile appeared. "Wow, your dress is really striking," Camille said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. A bold statement for today. What sounded like a compliment was a veiled insult, as Camille found subtle ways to highlight the class divide between Lovell and her family. Lovell clenched her hands, but kept her expression composed. She knew this kind of condescension wasn't new. She had heard such words for years, from teachers, classmates, and society itself. She had always had to prove herself, not just because of her skin color, but because of her intellect and talent. Even so, each time left a small scar inside. But today, she wouldn't let those remarks shake her confidence. She smiled faintly and stood her ground. Raymond, standing beside his family, sensed the tension in the air but didn't know what to do. His eyes met Lovell's, but he said nothing. He saw her enduring cold stares and cutting words from his family, and inside him rose a feeling of helplessness. He loved Lovell, but he also knew his family wouldn't easily accept her, not even when she was the top of her class, not even as valedictorian. Lovell's awareness of the situation grew sharper with each passing second, as Raymond's family continued to ignore her presence, treating her like an outsider. She felt herself standing between two worlds. On one side, the Shaws, a world defined by wealth and status. On the other, her world, where she had to fight to prove her worth. But Lovell wasn't going to let their condescension dim her moment. She had earned her place, not by luck, but through dedication and brilliance. Even in the face of overt discrimination, she stood tall and refused to let them shake her resolve. Raymond could see the pain in Lovell's eyes, but he wasn't strong enough to confront his own family. He wanted to defend her, but his hesitation only made things worse. Lovell, though heartbroken, walked on with quiet determination, because she knew this was just one moment in a much longer journey. These challenges would not defeat her. She was a fighter, and today she would prove it. There were no direct insults, but the remarks from Raymond's family left deep wounds in Lovell Scott's heart. Every comment from them felt like a subtle jab, loaded with implication, making her feel unacknowledged, despite all the battles she had fought to achieve this success. Maya Shaw, Raymond's mother, was the first to make Lovell feel the sting of difference. When she shook Lovell's hand coldly, Maya didn't forget to add a remark. "That dress of yours is quite the bold statement." That backhanded compliment was her way of implying that Lovell was being too much, that she shouldn't stand out so brightly among everyone else, especially at such a formal graduation. Maya had always lived in a world of refinement, where elegance followed rigid, unspoken rules, and everything had to be just right. And Lovell, with her deep purple dress, was a disruption to that order. Her words felt like a reprimand for choosing to stand out, for refusing to conform to the limits society had quietly placed on her. But the discrimination didn't stop with Maya. Camille Shaw, Raymond's sister, constantly conveyed her disdain through every glance. When she saw Lovell, she let out a dry chuckle and said, "A lucky scholarship, right?" A rare opportunity. Not everyone gets one of those. The words were spoken lightly, but they cut like a blade. A rare opportunity. The implication being that Lovell had only received her scholarship because of her race, that she was a token of diversity rather than someone of genuine merit. Those words stunned Lovell, as they dismissed every ounce of effort and sacrifice she had poured into her academic journey. The late-night study sessions, the exhausting mornings filled with lectures, all the work she had done to become valedictorian, none of it seemed to matter in their eyes. All they saw was a fortunate recipient of a scholarship she didn't truly earn. Gerard Shaw, Raymond's father, said little, but his gaze swept over Lovell like a riddle he couldn't solve. He examined her from head to toe like someone inspecting merchandise, devoid of kindness. She could feel the judgment in his eyes, and it only deepened her sense that she didn't belong here. The feeling of being scrutinized and racially profiled made Lovell feel like an outsider in what should have been the proudest moment of her life. Even though none of the words were overtly hostile, Lovell felt each wave of hurt crashing into her heart. She had grown up with discrimination, had lived in a society where the color of her skin was always grounds for people to question her abilities. But this was the first time she had to confront it so directly and so coldly, from the very family of the man she loved. Those looks, those softly spoken but heavily loaded comments, made her feel not only belittled, but erased from the moment. Still, Lovell refused to let those insults shake her. She gently adjusted the bun in her hair, her sleek black curls like a crown, one that symbolized resilience and inner strength. Every part of her appearance was a quiet declaration that no matter how the world viewed her through its lens of bias, Lovell Scott would never make herself smaller. She knew this battle didn't end at a graduation ceremony. It was just one of many trials she would have to face throughout her life. But today, no one would diminish her. When she looked at Raymond, the man she loved, Lovell no longer felt disheartened. She realized that even if he didn't say it aloud, he was still standing with her. But she would have to be the stronger one, the one who proved her worth. She looked at them one more time, her expression steady, her smile calm, but her heart filled with unwavering resolve. No one would belittle her. No one would dim the light of her hard-earned success. She knew that today, she would make them all see that Lovell Scott was not the product of luck, but the result of relentless effort and exceptional talent. And today's speech, filled with truths she would not shy away from, would be the clearest proof of that. Lovell walked forward with determination, like a warrior entering battle, not just fighting for herself, but for all those like her, for those who constantly have to rise against discrimination and the suffocating grip of prejudice that shadows their lives. When Raymond Shaw heard the sharp, condescending remarks from his family, he felt each word, each sentence like a blade slicing into his mind. His expression clearly showed discomfort, but he couldn't immediately voice any protest. The words from Maya, Camille, and Gerard were like relentless blows to Lovell's heart. Yet for Raymond, A hollow silence replaced the reactions he longed to express. He looked at Lovell. Her eyes seemed to conceal pain, yet they radiated fierce resilience. She didn't need sympathy, nor a shallow pat on the back. She needed him, not just as a boyfriend, but as someone willing to stand beside her. Someone brave enough to protect her against the forces she had to face within his own family. But instead, Raymond remained silent, unsure of what to say or do. That sense of helplessness made Lovell feel even more alone, even though he was standing right there next to her. Raymond had heard about the hardships Lovell had endured her whole life, from teachers who never believed in her, classmates who always saw her as an outsider, to the wounds she could never share with anyone. But now, confronted with blatant racism within his own family, Raymond was lost, unsure how to act. He loved Lovell, but was that love strong enough for him to rise and defend her against the disdain of his blood? The look Maya Shaw gave Lovell during her cold greeting, Camille's contempt in every word, and Gerard's disapproving stares made Raymond feel like he was trapped between two worlds. He was all too familiar with discrimination in society, but when it came from his family, he found himself unable to muster a strong response. Raymond's hesitation deeply hurt Lovell. She knew he loved her, but she also knew that love alone wasn't always enough to change the perceptions of a family that worshipped power and social status. The feeling of disappointment swelled in Lovell as she looked at Raymond, the man she trusted, the one she had hoped would be her shield against his own family. But he wasn't. His eyes avoided hers, lacking confidence, like a man standing in the middle of a storm with no idea how to weather it. The quiet pain of abandonment wrapped itself around her heart. It wasn't just the racism or prejudice from Raymond's family that hurt. It was the passivity of the man she loved. She didn't need a comforting hug or hollow words right now. Words like, "You'll be fine," or "I'll talk to them later," only widened the chasm between their two worlds. What she needed was for him to show that their love wasn't just a simple romance, but a relationship grounded in support and mutual defense in the face of real challenges. She needed him to stand up and face his family, not just for her, but for their love itself. Love is about shared moments, about protecting one another from outside forces. But in this moment, Raymond couldn't overcome the social barriers his family had built. Lovell didn't need a boyfriend who stood silently when she was in pain. She needed a man who would stand by her side, who would do what was right, who would have the courage to push back against what was wrong. Though her heart was in turmoil and deeply wounded, Lovell remained determined not to let the words of Raymond's family break her. She looked at Raymond, and in her eyes was a strange yet steady resolve. She wanted him to see that despite the silence, despite the discrimination, she would not waver. She would continue to fight, not just for herself, but for all those like her, for those who would never allow themselves to be humiliated or diminished because of the color of their skin or the place they came from. She understood that not everyone could stand up when faced with discrimination, but what she needed was someone willing to protect her in every situation, not just when it was convenient. Raymond's silence, though a reflection of the internal conflict he was grappling with, only deepened Lovell's loneliness. But she would not allow herself to step back. She had risen from hardship before, and she would keep rising, even if this battle with prejudice would follow her for the rest of her life. As Lovell stepped onto the stage, the brilliant golden light of the afternoon illuminated her figure, casting a radiant glow that highlighted her unwavering strength. Though unspoken anxiety still lingered in her heart, and the veiled remarks and contemptuous stares from Raymond's family echoed in her mind, Lovell was determined not to let them overshadow the most important moment of her life. Her neatly coiled hair resembled a small crown, and that elegant purple dress stood as a powerful declaration of her identity. Every eye in the auditorium was no longer fixed merely on a black girl, but on a strong, confident woman, ready to raise her voice in front of society, regardless of the barriers in her path. When she approached the podium, fear no longer had a hold on her. She had rehearsed every word, imagined how her speech would echo throughout this hall. Lovell Scott, who had endured every criticism, every racist slight, and every unspoken barrier during her academic journey, would now deliver a message of justice, resilience, and the fight against societal prejudice. Today, we stand at a crossroads of justice, a call that asks not only that we look beyond ourselves, but that we confront the biases society so often hides. Her voice rang out, strong and clear, filling the space. Each word she spoke was a challenge to all those who had ever underestimated her, those who believed she could never achieve what she had. Her speech wasn't just a story of personal success. It was a firm assertion that she, and others like her in this world, deserved recognition, even in the face of racism. She continued, sharing her journey, the sleepless nights in the library, the exhausting and grueling study sessions, the evenings when she bit through the pain in her body, but kept studying, because she knew the only way to overcome everything was through learning and perseverance. She spoke of her parents, who had sacrificed everything to raise her. Her mother, a librarian who worked tirelessly to provide her with precious books. Her father, a mechanic who taught her how to be self-reliant, how to fix what was broken in life. It wasn't just about their jobs. It was about the boundless love they had poured into her. Lovell's story about her parents and her journey brought a stillness over the entire room, as if the air had frozen with each word she spoke. No one could remain unmoved by what she shared. My parents taught me that everything in this life must be fought for. Nothing comes easy, and I will never allow anyone to judge me by the color of my skin. Her voice echoed, not with bitterness, but with a power that could not be denied. Raymond's family, the very ones who had ridiculed her moments ago, now sat in silence. Maya sat upright, her lips tightly pressed. Gerard looked down, perhaps trying to avoid Lovell's gaze. Camille, with her usual arrogance, tried to maintain a cold exterior, but the discomfort on her face could no longer be hidden. Each word from Lovell was like a ray of light cutting through darkness, shining into the shadows within them. But Lovell didn't look at them. She didn't let the Shaw family blur the significance of this moment. She looked only at the audience in front of her, the people who had supported her throughout her long journey. She realized this fight was not just for herself, but for all those who had endured discrimination, those who had fought for the recognition they deserved. Each sentence she spoke was a challenge to those who had ever looked at her with prejudice. I stand here because I fought for every step I took. I stand here not just for myself, but for those who never got this chance, for those judged by the color of their skin, by where they came from. Her voice brimmed with emotion, as if she were shouting to the world that she was here because of her capability and resiliency, not because of luck. Lovell's speech wasn't just a declaration of personal achievement. It was a powerful call to society. She had not only transformed herself, but also reshaped how people perceived Black individuals in her community. For her, success was not a matter of race, but the result of relentless effort. Even though Raymond's family remained distant, it was undeniable that Lovell's speech had left a profound impression on everyone in the room. She had made them stop and reconsider. She was not just a Black girl, not just an outstanding graduate. She was a true warrior, someone who stood up against prejudice and injustice. When her speech ended, thunderous applause erupted. The audience rose to their feet, showing their respect for Lovell. Yet in the hall, there were still a few eyes that held disapproval, especially from Raymond's family. Even so, Lovell didn't care. She had won the greatest battle, the battle within herself. Immediately after Lovell Scott's speech ended, the atmosphere in the auditorium still echoed with thunderous applause. But among the people clapping, the Raymond Shaw family stood apart. Maya Shaw, Raymond's mother, clapped stiffly, her eyes unable to conceal the contempt behind them. Camille Shaw, in a stylish blazer and carefully styled hair, stood next to her mother, looking at Lovell as though she didn't belong in this world. Their clapping lacked emotion. It was merely a perfunctory gesture. Raymond stood nearby, his eyes drifting toward Lovell with a trace of helplessness. He knew she had done incredibly well, that she had made everyone in the hall respect her, but he felt trapped between two worlds. He loved Lovell, but his family's gaze was like a wall separating them. Maya turned to Camille and whispered something that made Camille smirk. Lovell only caught a few scattered words, but they were enough for her to understand their scorn. "Maybe she's just lucky, not talented," Camille said, her eyes scanning Lovell with a judgmental look. Those words weren't just a critique of Lovell's speech. They were a blatant denial of her abilities and the hard work she had invested. The sense of hurt was impossible for Lovell to hide. She could feel the chill in their attitude, not just toward her achievements, but toward everything she represented. They didn't just think she was unworthy of Raymond. They didn't believe she had a right to exist in their world at all. All the recognition she had received from professors, classmates, and those who truly understood her worth seemed meaningless in the face of this rejection from Raymond's family. Raymond, the man she loved, stood silently watching the scene, doing nothing to change it. He said nothing. He didn't challenge their offensive words. It was as though he was caught in an internal war he couldn't overcome, the love he felt for Lovell, and the loyalty he still held toward his family. That conflict and inaction made Lovell feel not just like an outsider in Raymond's family, but someone being deliberately excluded. She recalled her mother's words, that no matter how hard life got, she was never allowed to stop fighting. Lovell had fought her whole life to reach this point, not just academically, but in a society that always viewed her as an outsider. She had endured sneers from those who didn't understand her, from those who didn't know that every day she had to push through racial and gender biases just to stand at that podium today. She had trained herself never to bow to gazes like these, but this was different. This was coming from Raymond's family, the very people she had hoped would protect her in times of adversity. Maya and Camille continued to act indifferent, even after the speech ended. They made no effort to congratulate or acknowledge Lovell's excellence. Their gestures, subtle as they were, radiated disdain. She felt shunned, not because she lacked talent, but because of the color of her skin. Their piercing, cold stares made her question whether she had the strength to keep fighting, not just for herself, but for everyone like her. Meanwhile, Raymond stood beside her, still unable to react. He looked at her, then back at his family, but his silence felt like a blade in Lovell's heart. She didn't need apologies or sympathy from him at that moment. What she needed was protection, the courage for him to stand up and say she deserved respect. But no, Raymond just stood there, as if he couldn't escape his family's shadow. She turned away, trying to maintain composure, but inside her, a storm was rising. She loved Raymond, but love didn't mean accepting this kind of discrimination. She had affection for his family, but if they couldn't accept her, could that love be strong enough to conquer everything? These questions swirled through her mind as she looked at Raymond's family once more, not with anger, but with resolve. She didn't need their approval because she had already proven her worth to the world. But Raymond, did he have the courage to stand beside her in these defining moments? After the graduation ceremony, another long evening passed in suffocating silence, where Lovell Scott not only had to endure the sneers from earlier, but also had to face racial discrimination once again, this time from Raymond Shaw's own family during a formal dinner. The elegant restaurant shimmered with soft, ambient lighting, reflecting off polished wooden tables. But even amidst the refinement of the space, Maya Shaw and Camille Shaw made no effort to hide their contempt for Lovell. Though the meal had been meticulously prepared, and the chatter and laughter of other guests echoed around them, Lovell still felt alone and out of place. Every word from Raymond's family felt like a blade slicing through her spirit, making her feel as if she didn't belong there, despite having been a part of Raymond's life for the past 2 years. Maya Shaw, with piercing eyes, couldn't conceal her disapproval when she looked at Lovell. She didn't miss any opportunity to make her stance known. "Can you tell me how exactly you achieved all of this? The scholarship, your success," Maya began, her voice smooth but laced with implication. "It surely wasn't easy, was it? A girl like you, from a poor neighborhood, how could you possibly overcome all those obstacles without special help?" Her words might have sounded like recognition, but in truth, they were a subtle attack on Lovell's dignity and capability. The gentle tone masked a harsh slap in the face, completely invalidating all the effort she had invested. Maya was judging Lovell not just by her past, but by her skin color. She insinuated that perhaps Lovell had been favored simply because she was black, and that her success couldn't possibly be earned by merit alone. Yet Lovell didn't allow those words to break her. She sat upright, her hand steady on the table, and met Maya's gaze with firm resolve. "Maya, my success wasn't random. I spent years studying and fighting to be here. My scholarship is the result of countless hours in the library, of effort I poured into proving I could make it," Lovell replied, her voice calm but unwavering. "It wasn't a favor, it was persistence." Maya raised an eyebrow slightly, saying nothing further. Camille Shaw, seated beside her, couldn't handle Lovell's candor, and chimed in with a sneer. "Then you must be really lucky to have had the chance to attend those kinds of schools. Not everyone gets opportunities like that, you know." Camille's gaze slid over Lovell with condescension, her tone both mocking and smug. Camille's comment deepened Lovell's sense of alienation. "An opportunity earned is not luck. It's hard work, and I worked for it," she responded, trying to stay composed, even as her heart clenched at the scorn dripping from Camille's voice. Gerard Shaw, Raymond's father, had remained silent until he finally decided to join the conversation. "So you were part of one of those diversity scholarship programs, weren't you?" Gerard asked, his tone light yet unmistakably dismissive. His words were not just a question. They were a direct dismissal of Lovell's merit. It was clear he regarded her achievements as nothing more than a product of a handout from the system, an excuse to give someone like her a chance while others were left without. Those words made Lovell feel rejected all over again. She had proven herself long ago, yet all Raymond's family could see was supposed luck or bias instead of the tireless effort and relentless achievements she had earned. Those words made her feel like she was standing on a battlefield, fighting not just for herself, but to prove to society that skin color should never be a reason to question someone's competence. Though those remarks could have eroded her confidence, Lovell held her composure. She couldn't let their contempt make her small. She had fought too hard to get here and had no reason to bow before this discrimination. Raymond, still sitting beside her, could feel the tension in the air. He turned toward Lovell, regret clouding his eyes. She sensed the helplessness in his gaze, but she didn't want his silence to excuse his family's actions. Lovell knew this wasn't the first time she had faced discrimination, and it wouldn't be the last. But today, she couldn't let this denial pass. She couldn't allow Raymond's family to continue treating her as someone unworthy. She would fight for herself, for the values she had always held, and for the love she had given Raymond. The words of Maya Shaw, Camille Shaw, and Gerard Shaw felt like blows to Lovell Scott's heart, making her feel broken and belittled at the very moment she most deserved respect. The snide remarks, the cold stares, and the denial of her accomplishments had cornered her into a place she never wished to be. But she couldn't allow herself to drown in that pain. She had overcome far too many challenges to be here, and she would not let these people dim her victory. Meanwhile, Raymond Shaw stood there, his heart heavy, his mind in turmoil. He loved Lovell, but his silence throughout the dinner, amid his family's disdain, hadn't been an easy choice. He could feel the anger, the disappointment in Lovell's eyes, but he still lacked the courage to face his family, to defend the woman he loved. The helplessness within him, the inner war between his love for Lovell and his loyalty to his family, had rendered him mute, as if there were no path forward. But not long after, when Camille uttered her final mocking comment, a different light suddenly sparked inside Raymond. Camille's remark, though softly delivered, was the final straw. "You know," Camille smirked, "people like you are really lucky to have a chance to sit here with us." She had no idea that her words had ignited a burning resolve in Raymond. Raymond looked at Lovell, his eyes suddenly alight with the sharp awareness that he could no longer stand on the sidelines. He loved her, and that love deserved to be defended, not with gentle words, but with decisive action. Raymond could no longer remain silent. He turned to face his family, and in that moment, every eye fell upon him. "If you can't respect Lovell, then I won't stand with you anymore," Raymond declared, his voice no longer vague, but firm and unwavering. He stood tall, his gaze fixed and unflinching, as though every ounce of confidence within him had been reborn at that moment. This was the point of no return. It was no longer just a choice between family and Lovell. It was a declaration that love and respect for the woman he loved meant more than any inherited legacy. Maya, Gerard, and Camille were all stunned by Raymond's words. They had never imagined he would rise against them, especially since they had always seen him as a reflection of the powerful family they had built. Shock and confusion spread across Maya's face as she looked at Raymond, seemingly unable to believe what she had just heard. Camille, her usual sneer gone, now sat in silence, unsure how to react to Raymond's sudden defiance. Gerard, the family's patriarch and the most authoritative voice, remained quiet. Raymond's words had struck like a lightning bolt, shaking the very foundations of what he believed. The Shaw family had always stood firmly on pillars of power and subtle exclusion, and yet here was their son choosing to stand with a black woman, the very one they had undermined throughout dinner. But no matter how his family responded, Raymond would not retreat. He had made his choice. In those few seconds, Lovell felt a new current of energy surge through the room, a strength in Raymond she had never seen before. He didn't just love her with words, but with bold, irreversible action. She could see that Raymond had chosen he, not just out of love, but out of belief. Belief in her, in who she was, in what she had accomplished. He understood that Lovell didn't need saving. She needed protection and recognition. Lovell couldn't believe it as she looked into Raymond's eyes. She hadn't known he had that kind of courage, but now she saw that he did. A powerful wave of emotion swelled in her chest, a renewed trust in their love, and herself. "Thank you, Raymond," she whispered, her voice catching slightly with emotion. No more words were needed. That moment had said everything. She knew now that Raymond had chosen her, and she was ready for whatever came next, after the tense confrontation at dinner, when Raymond Shaw stood up to defend her in front of his family. Lovell Scott not only felt the support of the man she loved, but also recognized a pivotal moment in her journey of resistance. However, less than an hour later, an unexpected event changed everything, opening a promising new chapter in her life. As the dinner came to an end, and guests began to leave, the air remained heavy. Maya, Gerard, and Camille said nothing more, but their silence was enough for Lovell to feel the fracture in her relationship with Raymond's family. She understood that no matter how fiercely he defended her, his family would never truly accept her. Yet in that moment, Lovell realized she didn't need their acceptance. She had stood her ground in this battle and would continue her journey, no matter how many challenges lay ahead. As they were preparing to leave, someone Lovell never expected approached her. Vincent Stevens, a respected law professor and one of Lovell's instructors during her time at the University of Chicago, appeared in the quiet atmosphere of the dining room. With calm professionalism, Vincent offered a gentle smile and pulled out a chair near Lovell. She could see in his eyes a deep respect and admiration for her. "Lovell," he began, his voice deep and assured, "I heard your speech today. Truly impressive. You're not only an outstanding student, but also someone with great inner strength. I'd like to invite you to join Kessler & Lane, one of the top law firms. We're looking for talented lawyers like you for a senior position." Lovell felt as though time had frozen when she heard his offer. It wasn't just a job offer from a top firm. It was the recognition she had long yearned for. Kessler & Lane was one of the most prestigious law firms in Chicago, and joining it wouldn't just be a stepping stone for her career. It was a declaration that Lovell Scott had real talent, not just luck, as Raymond's family had implied. "I can't believe this," Lovell murmured, her eyes wide with surprise. She couldn't imagine that such a major career opportunity would come at such a turbulent moment. In her mind, a storm of emotions surged: joy, pride, and a powerful sense that all her efforts had finally been rewarded. Vincent Stevens smiled and continued, "You've not only been one of our best students, but the way you stood up and spoke your truth in front of the Shaws today convinced me even more that you deserve this opportunity." He wasn't just evaluating Lovell based on academic achievements, but also on the spirit and courage she had shown in life, qualities not everyone possesses. Every word from Vincent rang out like a powerful affirmation that Lovell was not only capable, but possessed a strength of spirit that could rise above all prejudice. It made her feel like she was standing at the peak of triumph, recognized not only for her intellect, but for her unyielding perseverance and fighting spirit. "We want you to be part of our team, Lovell. The position I'm offering you is more than just a job. It's a chance for you to change the legal industry, to make a real impact in the community. If you agree, I'll schedule a meeting with the partners to discuss details," Vincent said, his eyes steady and full of conviction. Within minutes, Lovell felt her life had completely transformed. She had fought through so many challenges, from condescending looks and harsh criticism to the doubts cast by those closest to her. But today, an outsider, someone who knew nothing of her past, except what she had shown through her work and character, saw her in a completely different light. This was the moment Lovell knew she had overcome not only academic hurdles, but also the social prejudices that had weighed on her for so long. She hadn't just received a job offer. She had received validation for every ounce of effort she had put in. It was her victory, not just a personal one, but a victory for all Black individuals who constantly have to fight to prove their worth in a world riddled with bias. When she responded to Vincent Stevens' offer, her voice was calm, but firm with determination. "I'm honored by this offer. I accept." It was a defining decision, not just for her career, but for her life. Lovell had proven that she was not just a Black girl with a scholarship. She was a woman of talent, intellect, and strength, ready to reshape the very field she belonged to. The sense of self-belief, the recognition from those around her, and her decision to stand firm for her values had brought Lovell to a future brighter than ever before. Although Maya Shaw, Gerard Shaw, and Camille Shaw continued to show coldness and contempt toward her, Lovell Scott did not let it discourage her. All the racism, the rejection, and the sarcastic remarks from Raymond Shaw's family could not shake her determination. Lovell had proven that she was not only deserving of every achievement she had earned, but also worthy of love, respect, and a firm place in the world she had always dreamed of. She remembered vividly the moment standing on the graduation stage when the hostile stares and biting words from Raymond's family pierced her like sharp arrows to the soul. Yet in that moment, she felt the internal strength she had built over the years. Her speech was not just a message about personal success. It was a declaration of war against social prejudice. She spoke of everything she had endured, not just the scholarships, not just her academic excellence, but the daily battles she fought against discrimination and bias. Though Raymond's family did not accept her, they could no longer deny Lovell's brilliance, and ultimately, Vincent Stevens, a highly respected law professor, had offered her the opportunity she truly deserved, a formal invitation to join Kessler & Lane, one of the top law firms in Chicago. It was not only a recognition of her academic achievements, but a validation of the capability and strength she had demonstrated over her long journey. When Lovell accepted the offer from Kessler & Lane, she felt as though she had won, not just a job, but everything she had fought for. She didn't need the acceptance of Raymond's family. She had risen from adversity and carved out her place in society. This new job wasn't just a career opportunity. It was a symbol of elevation and triumph. Raymond, though unable to fully shield her during that dinner, also sensed the shift in their relationship and their love. Although his family could not embrace her, he knew that Lovell was not someone who could be broken. Their love was not built solely on empathy, but on a profound respect for all they had been through together. Raymond had not only stood beside her in that critical moment, he continued to walk with her in the challenging journey ahead. The words of Raymond's family no longer held power over her. Lovell no longer needed their validation because she had proven her worth with every step she had taken in life. With her new position at Kessler & Lane, she knew the road ahead would still be difficult, but she no longer feared it. She had already conquered the hardest obstacles: prejudice, doubt, and ridicule. She had gone from being a black girl from a poor neighborhood to a talented and resilient attorney capable of changing the world. Lovell's love and resilience had helped her overcome everything, and now she was stepping into a new chapter of her life, one in which she would no longer be seen as lesser, but as someone respected and welcomed. She and Raymond continued their relationship, but it was no longer one dependent on family approval. They had broken through the barriers his family had put up, and now Lovell stood firmly on her own 2 feet. She knew that love and her partner's respect were important, but her self-respect was what made her stronger than ever. With a promising future ahead, Lovell was not only a successful woman in her career, but also a symbol of resilience, defiance, and unwavering self-belief. She had nothing left to prove, for every day she affirmed her value through bold actions and courageous choices. If this story moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Watch the next video to see how the fight continues.